6 wheels, armored proportions, and a face that looks like it was drawn by someone who had never once been told the word compromise. That is the Nevera. And before we go any further, full transparency up front. What you are looking at is a fictional concept, generated by AI. No manufacturer, no price tag, no delivery date, just a vision. But the ideas embedded in this design are sophisticated enough that they deserve a serious breakdown. Here is how this video is going to work. We are going to walk the exterior first, the face, the profile, the stance, what this thing communicates before it even moves. Then we are going inside, zone by zone, and I am going to show you exactly what the exterior geometry tells us is happening in the living space. After that, powertrain and technology, because if something like this were ever engineered for reality, the propulsion logic would be genuinely interesting. And then the verdict. My honest take. What this concept gets spectacularly right, what is impractical, and the one detail at the rear of this vehicle I genuinely have not seen anywhere else. And I am saving that for when we get there. Let's go. Start here because this is the first thing that decides whether someone stops scrolling or keeps walking. The Nevera's front face is operating in a design language I would call armored futurism. Every surface is faceted. You can see it in the way the fenders kick out at sharp geometric angles, the way the hood is broken into distinct planes rather than flowing as a single surface. This is not accidental. Faceted surfaces do two things simultaneously. They scatter light across the body in a way that reads as complex and premium at any distance, and they signal structural intention. This thing is built to hit things. Or at minimum, to make you believe it is. The headlight clusters are integrated into those angular fender cuts with a precision that takes real restraint to pull off in a concept. Most AI-generated vehicles go too complex with lighting. The Nevera has held back. The result is a face that has presence without shouting. That gold accent trim running through the lower fascia, I want to come back to that because it is doing something smart that I will explain in a moment. The front badge reads Nevera in clean block lettering below a diamond geometry logo. Simple. Confident. That is exactly right for a vehicle at this scale. Overbadging a vehicle this large makes it look insecure. Underbadging makes it look unfinished. This is calibrated. Step back and look at the full silhouette. What you are seeing is a two-volume architecture, a distinct cab forward section, and then a living module that begins at a sharp vertical break just behind the front doors. That break is significant. It is the design telling you. The driving machine and the living machine are two separate ideas, connected but not compromised by each other. That is actually how the best expedition coaches work in reality. The roofline is flat, not tapered, not raked, genuinely flat with a slight parapet edge. For you, living in this thing, that flat roof means one thing above everything else. Stand-up ceiling height. We are likely looking at something close to 2 meters of interior headroom across the full living module. That is not a small thing when you are spending 3 weeks in a vehicle crossing a continent. The glass-to-body ratio on the side is deliberately low. You can see it, 3 deep rectangular windows punched into the living module, recessed and tinted. This is the right call for an expedition positioned concept. High glass-to-body ratio looks spectacular in a static render, but it means heat, privacy compromise, and structural weakness at the lateral walls. The Nevera has prioritized the experience of being inside over the experience of looking at it from outside. That is a maturity of thinking you do not always see. At this vehicle category, a heavy 6-wheeled expedition platform, You are not chasing aerodynamic efficiency the way a sports car would. What the Navara is doing instead is managing airflow at the key transition zones. Those angled cuts at the front corners, the slight roof taper at the leading edge, and the way the rear module appears to terminate with a clean vertical face. Drag reduction here translates directly to range. If this were an electric platform, and I think the powertrain section is going to show you exactly why it should be, every point of CD reduction at this frontal area represents meaningful additional kilometers. The finish reads as a warm graphite, not quite silver, not quite brown. It sits in that space where natural light reveals depth in the panel without the surface competing with the architectural lines. This is smart. Dark finishes on vehicles this large can make them read as monolithic and heavy. This particular tone keeps the facets readable. You can see what the designer intended. Every panel change has meaning. That gold accent trim I mentioned at the front. Look at how it carries through. It reappears at the body line, at the door surround, at the step well. Gold on a vehicle this dark and this tactical is a very specific statement. It is saying, this is not a military vehicle that happens to be comfortable. This is a luxury vehicle that happens to be capable. The trim is the tell. 6 wheels. 2 front, for rear in a tandem configuration. Look at the tire profile, substantial sidewall, aggressive tread, and a wheel diameter I would estimate at somewhere between 20 and 22 inches based on the door proportions. The wheels carry the same diamond geometry as the front badge. That kind of detail coherence across a concept is actually rare, and it signals a designer who thought about the vehicle as a system, not a collection of parts. The stance is wide. Planted. This thing does not look like it would move if you pushed it. Which brings me to what is waiting for you inside, because the proportions we have just walked through tell a very specific story about what the living space is doing. And that story gets interesting fast. We do not have interior renders of the Navara. What we do have is everything the exterior just told us, and that exterior is unusually communicative. So let me show you how this works. We established that flat roofline. Now use the wheel diameter, call it 21 inches, as a scale reference and work upward. The distance from ground to roofline gives us an estimated total vehicle height of somewhere between 3 and 3.3 meters. Subtract approximately a meter for the chassis and floor structure, and you are sitting at approximately 2 meters of interior headroom. In a vehicle this length, and I am estimating around 9 to 10 meters of overall length, that ceiling height means you are never, ever ducking. You are standing upright in every single zone. That sounds basic. It is not. Most production motorhomes in this class compromise ceiling height at the rear sleeping area. The Navara's proportions suggest it does not. Take that 9-meter habitable length and divide it. The cab forward section, driver, co-pilot, full instrumentation, occupies roughly the front 2 meters. That leaves 7 meters of pure living module. Here is how the logic almost certainly plays out. You enter through the side door we can see mid-body into a transition zone, probably a small utility lobby, wet room access immediately left or right because water management is most efficient near the side entry point. Then forward toward the cockpit, the lounge and kitchen zone. Rearward from entry, the sleeping quarters. That placement makes sense for 3 reasons. Sleeping at the rear puts the bed over the tandem axle group, which is structurally the most stable part of the floor. It distances the sleeping zone from road and engine noise, which in an electric platform is less relevant but still matters at speed. And it gives the sleeping quarters privacy from the lounge. You can close off the rear without walking through the kitchen. Those three recessed side windows are positioned at what would be sitting eye level for someone in a lounge chair. Think about what that means. You are not looking up through glass at a passing treeline. You are looking directly out at whatever is in front of you. A mountain range, a coastal road, a desert plateau. The view is framed, not panoramic. And framed views are almost always more composed and more satisfying than panoramic ones. Ask any architect. The ceiling in this zone at 2 meters feels generous without being cavernous. Cavernous is cold. 2 meters is close enough to human scale that the space feels intentional. Add in what the exterior's warm graphite finish suggests about interior material philosophy. I would expect dark tones, textured surfaces, warm lighting embedded in the ceiling parapet, and you are in a space that feels like a considered room, not a converted vehicle. In a vehicle this wide, and the stance puts us at probably 2.5 meters of interior width, the kitchen has room to breathe. Real room. I would expect induction cooking rather than gas at this specification level, for the obvious reason that an electric platform eliminates the logic of carrying combustible fuel for cooking when you have a large battery. Surface area is likely generous. The storage philosophy in a vehicle designed for extended off-grid operation will be volume first, deep drawers, modular cabinetry, integrated appliances flush to the wall surface. The rear position over the tandem axle is the most insulated part of the vehicle from road intrusion. In a petrol or diesel platform, rear positioning introduces drivetrain noise. In the electric scenario, this concept is almost certainly imagining. That problem largely disappears. What you have instead is a sleeping space that is quiet, private, and structurally stable. Bed orientation is almost certainly transverse, crossways to the direction of travel, which maximizes bed width in a way that longitudinal placement cannot. At 2.5 meters interior width, a transverse bed in this class is genuinely comfortable for 2 people. This is where the engineering gets honest. A walk-in shower in a vehicle this width is feasible. You need approximately 90 centimeters of floor space, and the Navara's proportions support it. Gray water management is the constraint. Off-grid operation means either a large gray water holding tank, an onboard filtration and recirculation system, or both. The latter is where luxury overlander engineering is genuinely heading. The concept does not show us this system, but the vehicle's size makes it a credible proposition. That angular windshield gives the driver a wide, low sight line, ideal for judging clearances on technical terrain without the distortion you get from a curved screen. Digital instrumentation is a given at this concept level. Head-up display integrated into the glass is probable. And with the autonomous highway capability that the powertrain section is going to suggest, the cockpit is likely designed to transition driver active on complex terrain, autonomous mode engaged on motorways, at which point the cockpit becomes an extension of the lounge. Living in something like this would mean waking up to a climate system that already knows you want 16 degrees in the sleeping zone and 19 in the kitchen. It means a connectivity hub that routes satellite internet regardless of terrain. It means a solar charging management system that spent the night calculating tomorrow's route against projected sun angles. You are not managing this vehicle. The vehicle is managing itself around you. If the Navara were ever engineered for reality, here is the logic that would power it. Full electric makes sense at this positioning level for 3 reasons that are impossible to argue with. First, this is a vehicle for people for whom fuel cost is not a consideration. The economics of electric are irrelevant to the buyer. What matters is the experience. Electric at this scale means near-silent operation, which transforms the in-vehicle experience fundamentally. Second, in the off-grid expedition context, solar charging integration is only coherent on an electric platform. Third, autonomous highway mode, which this concept's cockpit geometry strongly implies, requires a propulsion system with the precise, instant torque management that only electric motors provide. Battery capacity for a vehicle this size, if it were ever built, would need to be substantial. We are talking in the range of what you see in the heaviest long-haul electric truck platforms. Call it 300 to 400 kilowatt-hours. That is not a number that exists in any production passenger vehicle today. But the closest analog in the real world is the heavy EV coach segment, and the technology trajectory there is clear. Range for a platform like this would target somewhere above 500 kilometers on a full charge, not class-leading, but adequate for the expedition use case where overnight stops are built into the itinerary. The solar roof array visible across that flat roofline is not a primary power source at this scale. Let us be clear about that. The physics do not support it as a sole charging mechanism. What it is an off-grid interior systems sustainer. Climate control, lighting, connectivity, refrigeration, all of that can run indefinitely from a well-designed roof array without drawing from the main traction battery. That is the real value of solar in this application. Dual motor, dual axle drive. Given the six-wheel configuration, the Navara almost certainly imagines torque vectoring across all driven axles. What that means practically is that on loose or uneven terrain, power is redistributed in real time to wherever grip exists. You are not spinning out. You are moving through. At highway speeds, the same system provides active stability that no conventional drivetrain can match. The smart systems layer, predictive route planning, learning climate control, autonomous highway capability, these are not science fiction in 2024. They are engineering combinations that exist in separate systems across several platforms. What the Navara is imagining is their integration into a single coherent living system. That integration is the hard part. That is also exactly where the most interesting design work in mobility is happening right now. Here is my honest take on the Navara. The design coherence is remarkable for a concept. The diamond geometry runs from the badge to the wheel to the body cuts, and that kind of system-level thinking is what separates a resolved concept from a collection of impressive-looking parts. Most AI-generated vehicle concepts are impressive in fragments. The Navara holds together as a whole. That is genuinely unusual, and it is the single strongest thing this design does. I think the six-wheel configuration, for all its visual drama, creates a ground clearance and articulation compromise that the concept does not fully resolve. The tandem rear axle setup you see on real expedition platforms, your Earth roamers, your Unicat builds, exists because of sophisticated suspension geometry that allows independent wheel travel. The Navara's rendered stance suggests a relatively static rear section. In real-world off-road use, that would be the vehicle's first limitation. It would handle loose gravel magnificently. Technical rocky terrain would be a different conversation. The rear. And here is what I saved. Look at how the rear module terminates. There is a recessed panel section at the tail, barely visible in the render but clearly intentional, that has the proportions of a deployable platform. Not a step, not a door. Platform. If this concept is imagining what I think it is imagining, that is a fold-out rear deck, the kind of deployable living extension that the very best real-world overlander builds use to double usable outdoor living space at a campsite. I have not seen that incorporated at this scale in an AI concept before. If someone were ever brave enough to actually build this, That detail is the one that would end up in every review. One thing I would change: the side entry door position. It is centered on the body, which reads well in a static render but creates a zone layout compromise. Moving the entry point rearward by approximately 1 meter would allow the entire forward living area to be a single uninterrupted lounge, kitchen, and cockpit transition. No midspace interruption. It is a small geometric decision with significant interior quality implications. I would move it. The Navara is not imagining a vehicle. It is imagining a position. The position is this: that the future of ultra-luxury travel is not a private jet. It is not a super yacht. It is something that can go where neither of those things can go, and do it in a space designed with the same intention that goes into the best residential architecture. That is a credible vision. And the fact that an AI image generator can produce something this resolved as a concept image is itself an interesting signal about where the tools for thinking about future design are heading. It is a concept. It is fictional. It is AI generated. And it is still one of the most resolved motorhome concepts I have analyzed.